The game of the year in the SEC has officially arrived. The 4th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide hosts the 2nd-ranked Georgia Bulldogs at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Need I say more? Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game Saturday night in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get those as well. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. We're brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, and Prize Picks, the proud sponsor of the SEC Unfiltered tour that will see SEC Unfiltered in Tuscaloosa to catch this matchup firsthand. Make sure you check out those guys and support over at prizepicks.com using promo code SECU when you play your first $5 or more lineup to get your $50 bonus instantly. Guys, win or lose, you get that $50. So again, make sure you cash in today over at Prize Picks using promo code SECU. Alabama takes on the Georgia Bulldogs, the latest chapter in what has turned into the most fun and intense matchup we get in the SEC on, guys, what feels like a yearly basis. Again, we are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game, the SEC opener for both sides. Kalen DeBoer's SEC debut. Kirby Smart and Georgia looking to get that Crimson Tide-sized monkey off their back. Gentlemen, Dave Shumate, Cole Thompson helping me in breaking this game down. And guys, I said this off air before we went live. If you ain't excited to talk this one, buddy, you ain't got a pulse. What's going on, guys?
All right. Well, like y'all said, I think we're about to start the preview. We're about to get Cole to give us his prediction off air, but I want it to be a surprise. We had to save it for the people here that are listening to this fantastic video. But no, you're right. It is, quote unquote, you hate saying any game going into week 5 is the game of the year because there will be more important games down the line. But I do think, this is a money game for just talking about these individual players. This is the one game that the coaches, trainers, their agents from a future NFL standpoint all agree, yeah, dude, you need to go play in this game to get film. Like, this is the best of the best you can play against. You go play well in this game, you can go move yourself up a couple rounds and kind of get your name out here. So this similar Bama LSU 2011, a lot of those LSU Alabama games when it was Nick Saban, Les Miles, obviously when O was there. But then it's one of those kind of games. You'll have all 32 NFL teams represented in this game from an NFL personnel scout standpoint. You mentioned it, Chris. It's Kalen DeBoer's first SEC game. Kalen DeBoer, very mild-mannered guy. You're not going to get a lot out of him at press conferences. Everything's real glass half full, which that's fine. It's just different taste. Again, his press conferences you just don't get a lot out of. But he looks comfortable. In Alabama, how does that transition after losses? Not predicting anything yet, but you don't really know how you're going to change when the expectations come just after losses coming from a place like Washington, like where you would just get scanned over potentially in the Seattle news, maybe looking towards the Seahawks game. But no, you're right. A lot of storylines here. We'll talk about it more in depth, but I'm interested to see how Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart attack Jalen Milroe in this game. I think they're going to have a different scheme. Georgia's banged up on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They get some guys back. I think a lot of those guys are going to push themselves forward, to my point earlier about it's a film game. It's going to be fun, though. It's in Tuscaloosa. I think it's a massive benefit for Alabama. Alabama's Alabama's 8-2 in the last 10 against Georgia. The only 2 losses were in 22's national championship game, 21 season, in 07, Nick Saban's first year. So a lot of storylines. Real excited. You got to be excited. If you're a personnel guy, football guy, I like to see really good football talent across the board, some good chess matches. I think this is the game.
This is the game of the year. I'm not afraid to say what anyone else is trying to go ahead and build around. This is the game of the year. This is the game where you wake up for, where you sit in Athens, Georgia, where you sit in Tuscaloosa, and you say, how do I want to be remembered? This is the game to where you say for 365 days, we hate them and they hate us, and there is no love lost and certainly no love found. There is nothing less than what you want to see than the red and black go march on in Tuscaloosa if you are from A-Town, to watch as the Crimson and White bend the knee to what is supposed to be a new era of college football in the SEC. And if you are part of T-Town, you are part of the place that Nick Saban built a dynasty, in the great words, following in the pathway of guys such as Bear Bryant, as guys such as Gene Stalling, as guys such as Frank Thomas, with massive players, All-Americans, highlights, massive plays galore. This is where you get to go ahead and say the journey is just beginning. It's not the end of an era. It's just the next chapter. How do you want to be defined? How do you want to be remembered? How do you want to set the stage and what could be the SEC for the rest of the future? Brand new era with Texas and Oklahoma joining on in. What is your legacy? It starts on Saturday night, and it is the game of all games of 2024.
Cole Thompson's got me ready to run through a brick wall.
Is that
I'll tell you that right now.
Is that Mike? It's like a combo hybrid of Tom Rinaldi and Michael Buffalo.
That's just Cole Thompson as somebody who has seen this game be played out in so many different fashions, who has had such highs, has had such lows, has seen the heartbreak, the trials, the tribulations, the moments of madness, the moments of glory, the redemption arc for what you get in a guy such as Jalen Hurts, and finally the monkey off the back of a 4-decade drought out in Athens. This is why we love college football. This is why we spend Saturdays waiting to see games like this. This is why when we get to go cover this for a living, we call this a dream, because we get to talk about what will be a night to remember. How do you want to be remembered at that respective program? Does the G come out on top, or is the script day still as polished and poignant as it was underneath Nick Saban? Let's go, boys.
And guys, if you haven't realized by now, which shame on you if you haven't, you've probably been following along with us for a while. We're into week 5. We don't typically have the 3 amigos on for a preview. We got them all here. That's because, like Cole said, it's the biggest game of the year, at minimum to this point. And if you want to split hairs on what the biggest game of the year is in the SEC, fine. But it's Alabama and Georgia, and if I have to explain that one to you, then you're probably not in the right place. Again, the 4th-ranked Crimson Tide hosts the 2nd-ranked Bulldogs. SEC Unfiltered will be there on hand all weekend long. We're going to get in town Friday, be at the game Saturday night, take it all in at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Cannot freaking wait to get on site again. Of course, kickoff is set for 7:30 p.m. Eastern on ABC. All eyes will be on this game at Bryant-Denny. Guys, interesting note. In Vegas, a lot of spreads came out over the summer for this one, right? The big game of the year spreads, and we've seen everything from Georgia has been the favorite. They have been the favorite consistently all preseason, all summer, even coming in week a game. The spread in this one opened up at 1 point. Last I checked, Georgia is now a 3.5-point favorite. So money is coming in on the Dogs, and it's coming in on the Dogs early. The over-under this game is set at 49.5. Alabama leads the series 43, 26, and 4. And as you guys mentioned, the last meeting, who can forget last year's SEC championship, which there's still a bad taste in the mouth of the Dogs because Bama won that one 27-24 in a game that we might all recall. It didn't feel like many folks were giving Alabama much of a chance in that game to beat Georgia, knock the Dogs out the playoff. Instead, it was the Crimson Tide that was taking on Michigan for a spot in that national championship game. So, guys, as we dive into this matchup, again, there's so many storylines. There's so many different directions we can go. I want to start here because when Nick Saban stepped down, one of the first things we asked, who does this benefit most in the SEC? Who does it benefit most? The greatest of all time is hanging it up. No matter who Bama got as their next head coach, it's going to be different. Kalen DeBoer is a great head coach. He ain't the GOAT. He ain't the GOAT yet. He'll probably never be the GOAT to the level that Saban was, realistically. But we said it was Georgia. So as we talk about the pressures in this game, right, there's pressure on both sides. For Kirby Smart and this Georgia program, guys, I posed the question to you, and we're going to find out Saturday night. Was it a Nick Saban problem, or is it an Alabama problem? That's the question I think we all want answered, and I think that's what we're going to get defined. And we talked about this, guys, over the summer. This was one of those games, you might recall, it felt like all summer long it was just a foregone conclusion. Georgia's going to win this game. It fit neatly in the box of predictions and expectations. And guys, I think we all agreed this is one of those games that could upset the established order and create chaos in college football this year. Like, this is one, if it goes a certain way, fairly or unfairly, it feels weird talking about Bama as, them winning would be some massive surprise. But I think because people just assume, okay, no more Nick Saban. It's time for Kirby Smart and Georgia to ascend to the top. It may not be that simple, and I think it's one of the things that makes this matchup just so fascinating from the intangibles of this game standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure is on Georgia here from a standpoint of, like you said, you got to get the monkey off your back. And from a playoff standpoint, their schedule is a lot more difficult across the board. If Alabama wins this game Saturday, I think you put Alabama, you can check the box. I feel pretty good about that. I don't see them losing 3 games for the rest of the year. If they win this game, they could lose 2. They could lose to Tennessee. They could lose to LSU. Both games on the road. That's fair. Maybe Oklahoma, but you got to feel good after week 5. If Alabama were to take care of business Saturday, but most people would feel confident Bama at least gets an at-large spot into the college football playoff. You feel good saying that. I still wouldn't feel as good saying that if Georgia won. Yeah, I would still, if you made me pick Georgia in the playoff or not, if they beat Alabama, yeah. But as we've talked about a ton, they still got games at Ole Miss, at Texas, Tennessee at home. I mean, they could lose 2 out of 3 of those. They could lose all 3 of them. 2 of them are on the road. To your point, if it's an Alabama or Nick Saban thing, I mean, it's got to be a Nick Saban thing right now. I mean, Nick Saban's been there for 17 seasons. I mean, he lost 2 of them his first year, and he lost once in the national championship in a game. I do think if they were healthy, Alabama probably wins that game if they have any kind of receipt. If they don't lose John Mechie or J-Mo or Jameson Williams, I think they win that game. Story for another day. But no, I think it's definitely been a Nick Saban thing for sure. I mean, he's been at Alabama. He's been Alabama for the past 17 years. Before that, I mean, I'd been to a bunch of those games as a kid. My parents were season ticket holders in Alabama. I was at the 0-2 game. Billy Bennett put it right through the upright as time expired, beat us in 0-2. 07, it was Matthew Stafford to Mikey Henderson, first play of overtime, beat Alabama in Nick Saban's first year. So I can't really say it's just an Alabama thing. Yeah, Alabama's had success against Georgia, but people forget. You got to remember, Alabama and Georgia didn't play a lot. They were not – it used to be Bama played Vanderbilt and Tennessee every year until they really started rearranging the league. Those were their 2 Eastern Division teams. You didn't rotate a lot, and Bama wasn't making SEC championship games that often back there, and Georgia was in and out early in the rig. So they didn't play a lot. So it's definitely been a Nick Saban thing. I mean, he's been dominating Georgia ever since 07. I mean, I know we talked about the one national championship game, but it's just one. You lost 1 game. You were banged up. But no, to answer that question, I think it's definitely a Nick Saban thing because he's been there for so long.
I think the other part that you have to realize is right now, there's 2 truths to a situation. Number one, Alabama still can be Alabama if they want. Alabama has the offensive personnel. Alabama has shown you that when things are clicking and everything is humming to a T, they are going to strike. And they are going to give you their best punch. You have a veteran quarterback in Jalen Milroe. When the offensive line has the pieces and when it all seems to be in the right direction, there's very little wiggle room for error. If you're a defensive front, the wide receivers are fantastic. But then there's the other truth, and it's that Georgia finds a way early on in the season to have that slip-up game. And then usually that next week of practice is what you call Hell Week. And the first person that is going to be the main subject, the judge, the jury, the executioner, making sure that players do not go home until the wee hours of the morning, is Kirby Smart, because he wants there to be a standard. He is excited that now there's a little bit of doubt. Go look back at those games, and then also look at the scores in the next matchup. 2021, 10-3 final against Clemson. 2 weeks later, 40-13 against South Carolina. Then 62-0 and 37-0 against Vanderbilt. 2022, you go down to the wire against the Missouri team, 26-22. Next week, you eviscerate Auburn, 42-10, and then 55-0 against Vanderbilt. On top of that, you go play in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, and you win by double digits. Last year, it was the Auburn game, 27-20. Number 20, Kentucky comes rolling into town. They were hightailing on out of there with their tails tucked between their legs with the 51-13 loss. So that game last week or 2 weeks ago out in Kroger Field, 13-12, you had 2 weeks to prepare for this. You had 2 weeks to get your mind right and also really go through the bludgeoning that is Kirby Smart demanding excellence inside of every rep, every bench press, every squat, every turn whenever you're running sprints. It is all about perfection. And then there's the third truth. Every game that I just named was against an opponent that doesn't even come near the jockstrap of the talent that resides in Tuscaloosa. So what are we going to see? That, my friends, is where you know that if you are a program that's ready to handle the pressure of being the hunted, you don't drop a beat. That's when you know it. We're going to see that on Saturday. We're going to see that from Kirby. We're going to see Nick Saban and his aura still reside inside of the field that is now named after him in the house that Bryant Denny built. And we're going to continue to see the legacy that has been Alabama football. Because you have not seen a performance like this after a close call with Georgia before, at least in the Kirby Smart era.
Doesn't it feel like, guys, they absolutely intentionally gave both teams bye weeks before this game?
They
right?
100% did.
It's kind of how
make
they
sure
set up LSU Bama.
To make sure we got the best version of this game. I think that, you don't want to. You want both sides on as even a playing field as possible. It's certainly not an accident that both sides.
And I think the other thing, real fast, Chris, is that Dave was talking about these two don't play against each other. Well, now it feels like the most hostile rivalry in college football because of how much they now do play against each other. And how fitting is it that in the year that Nick Saban says, see you later, it's time for me to go hang out with Miss Terry and more importantly, go on to College Game Day and own that because I'm amazing at everything I do. Now we get to see what is the standard. Is it still Alabama or is it a new culture headlined by the former protege of Nick Saban?
Guys, I want to dive in the weeds this matchup on the field. Let's talk injuries real quick. Dave, I'm going to kick it over to you because I know you've obviously talked with some folks behind the scenes. You've got a lot of intel here. We knew Georgia, again, you mentioned banged up both lines of scrimmage. Tate Ratledge, the big one on the offensive side. Michael Williams defensively. There's some others as well. And then Alabama, I don't feel like they've been as nicked up with injuries. I could be wrong. Fill me in, David.
Was the kid, but I think they were supposed to give him some work. Yeah, I didn't know. I hadn't talked to anybody in Alabama, but I read that before we got on that he was getting some work later in the week. So I don't know if remember he left the Wisconsin game with like a knee ankle injury.
Okay. I know from the Georgia side, though, like I said, I'm going to kick it to you because I know we were talking off air. You've had some convos of those folks, and it sounds like Georgia, bye week helped both sides.
I think Michael Williams is going to play. Won't be 100%. I mean, to be fair, most college football players in week 5 are not 100% either. Everybody's going through nitpicky injuries. Michael Williams will play. Warren Brinson, I think, is going to play. They were both out against Kentucky. Jordan Hall's the kid I think it's had the setback apparently. Last week, I think he has like a tibia fracture. I think he's got really bad shin splints, and that like re-aggravated it last week. So I could see him not giving it a go. And like you mentioned, Tate Ratledge out with the tightrope surgery. They think he'll be back for Florida. So when they go to Jacksonville, but I think that's one I feel like it's going to impact a lot of predictions. The Tate Ratledge one, and obviously if they get Michael Williams, but who was it? It was like between Terry and Ingram, Dawkins, and a couple other guys. I mean, they played so many snaps in that interior against Kentucky. I mean,
that Kentucky game's always physical. I was going to say it's a street fight. Seems like every time.
You're talking about who got the advantage of the bye week. I guarantee if you really ask Kalen, DeBoer, and then behind closed doors, like we wish we probably would have played last week or yesterday. Yeah. It came at a perfect time for Georgia. Again, it is what it is. It
came at a perfect time for Georgia, for being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. They had to have it. So, I mean, I think, again, the health of these football teams obviously plays into effect. The Tate Ratledge thing is so interesting, Dave. I'm glad we bring that up because Cole mentioned this too. In case y'all missed it, the other Cole Kublik, came on our show, our game day show on Saturday this past weekend, and we talked offensive line play. Cole's a guy obviously played offensive line in this league. He knows. And we talked about how O-line play is down across the league. He even mentioned Georgia. He said the Tennessee Tech tape was more alarming for me than the Kentucky tape because Georgia was underwhelming against Tennessee Tech. Now you lose Tate Ratledge, guys. To your point, is it enough to sway people's predictions? We'll see throughout the week. That's a huge matchup, though, because Tate Ratledge is that anchor. And as Cole talked about, why is O-line play down? Lack of continuity, lack of depth. Portal, NIL taking effect. Who steps up for Georgia? That's going to be it. It's always a fun battle to watch these teams in the trenches. That's not news to anybody, but now you lose Ratledge. Who steps up there? I think it's a really, really big deal. We got to make sure we're focusing on counting down the days to kickoff.
I think the other thing that you have to really pay attention to is that in this game, more than ever, I think you have to establish the run early. I think that you want to be the one to bring the fight to Tuscaloosa. If you are Kirby Smart, if you are Mike Bobo, you want to trust that what you got in Trevor Etienne and Nate Frazier is going to be a good combination of physical, upfront, in-your-face, smash-mouth, old-school style football. Because in years past, if you look at the numbers, they love to throw. They love to set a tone early with the passing attack. But right now, there may not be that elite weapon so far. Now, I'm going to make this clear. I still think that when you talk about Georgia's overall unit with Dominic Lovett, with Ben Urisic, the tight end that they brought in from Stanford, Colby Young, London Humphreys, they're still really solid players, but they're certainly not security blankets and have the ideologies of what you saw last year with Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, who both at times missed multiple games because of lower body injuries, but you, I think, have to be able to get that Alabama defense, especially with this Kane Womack style brand that had a couple of miscues at times when it came to open field tackling, when you maybe felt like that the depth of the defensive line was getting a little bullied at moments, where you're able to kind of corral that center to where you have to play one-on-one matchups on the outside, where you have to trust that your safety play is going to be almost elite against tight ends or against a guy like Dylan Bell or Oscar Delp. So the offensive line is really important in this game for Georgia, because if you want to be the one to set the tone, you got to have a good run game. And I like what they have in the backfield, but this feels like that type of game where if early on you can't establish a dominant ground game, or at least a consistent ground game to where you're getting to open up the playbook on 3rd and 3 or 3rd and 4, and it has to be a 3rd and 10, and it's ideal that you're going to pass. That's where you find yourself in a lot of troubles and mishaps, even though Kane Womack is a brand new defense coordinator out in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, the back end for Bama, to Cole's point, if Georgia can run the football and Bama doesn't have to go add another person to the box. And again, we've talked about Bama only has 6 scholarship corners, 3 of those guys being true freshmen. So they're like a lot of teams thin on the back end. Yeah, if Georgia can start throwing off play action, and again, Georgia struggled to create explosive plays. And go back to Kentucky game, they really struggled. They have all season. Outside of maybe a couple plays in the second half against Clemson, they've struggled to generate explosive plays. So how did they kind of generate some guys on the outside, like you mentioned, Cole? You named a couple of them: London Humphreys, Colby Young, like Dominic Lovett, guys like that. Again, I heard potentially they could maybe throw this kid in this week because I think they're desperate to get some speed on the field. Is the true freshman they signed, the Dwight Phillips kid? This kid looked up his track time, 4.2840. And ran a 10.4 300 meter. I think he's kind of the scat back maybe for Georgia fans, for them not sure. Maybe an Isaiah McKenzie type kid. He's faster than Isaiah, but they're going to line him up in the backfield, more of a slot guy. He's kind of positionless right now, but I think that's a guy to keep an eye on that you may see, not consistently because he's a young cat, but I think it's almost a little see ball, get ball, maybe kind of wrong way to use because he's an offensive player, but it's how I always use football. Like Harold Perkins, randomly enough, bringing him up. You let him go see ball, get ball, let his athleticism take over. Just tell this kid where to go run. You can maybe see this kid on a wheel route out of the backfield if Alabama doesn't account for that personnel. I think Georgia's real desperate right now to try to find somebody they can trust from an explosive play standpoint. We talked off air. I think Georgia misses RHOBACK Thomas. Again, you kick him off the team 100%. I'm not saying that, but I think they miss that guy who can go win a lot of one-on-ones downfield. Maybe that's Colby Young this game.
And that's, to your point, something I made of note here before we get Win Alive is the explosives for Georgia, right? You have no more Ladd McConkey. You have no more Brock Bowers. We know this at this point. Where are the explosives coming from? Like I said, it's a team desperate for the explosives. Even against Clemson, right, it was a really, really sluggish first half, and you got it rolling late, but it's just where are they coming from? Who are the guys?
Even your tight ends haven't been bad.
Where's Oscar Delp? It hadn't been great.
Elevated that game. I mean, we all remember with Ladd McConkey and Bowers, they dominated the middle of the field. That's non-existent.
Hasn't really done anything either. And I talked to Georgia folks at media days before the season. I mean, they thought he was a better player than Oscar Delp. They thought he was kind of that Brock Bowers 2.0. I mean, they were really excited.
Kirkland brand. I'm telling you, that's what I heard.
Well, Kirkland brand is Bowers pretty damn good. I tell you that right now. That's high value right there in defense of Kirkland brand. But they haven't gotten that, right? So it's like this is, I heard Dave say something a couple of weeks ago that really stuck out to me. And I just love this phrase and saying, but could it apply here, Dave? Score from far. You might need to score from far in this game and create explosives because in a game like this, you get in between those 20s or you get in the red zone, it's going to be very difficult.
And to Cole's point, if they can establish the run, we've seen it in Alabama's first 3 games. Teams they've had opportunities. Alex Golish scheming up plays on the back end. Wisconsin scheming up plays. They just Western Kentucky.
And Georgia's got the dudes. They have the dudes.
Yeah, absolutely. They have enough dudes to go win. It's been there. Bama just hasn't played a quarterback yet who can go deliver the football to his playmakers. They haven't. They've left a lot of meat on the bone. The offense is playing against Bama. And again, that's not Alabama. That's not Maurice Linguist's fault. That's not Kane Womack's fault. Maybe towards the end of the year, if you don't get it figured out, yeah. But again, they're so young in the back end and they're limited on numbers. It is what it is. It's just this is the first game that it could be taken advantage of. But again, Carson Beck hasn't been playing his best either.
But let's also just call a spade here. Even though Carson Beck has not been playing his best, that does not mean on the brightest stage on Saturday night, in the moment to where legends are truly made, where the slogan in Tuscaloosa is where legends are made, you will get a legendary performance from a guy that at one point was viewed to be a Heisman favorite.
Yeah,
nobody is saying that.
Yeah, I agree. I think he needs to.
Let's switch sides of the ball, guys. When Alabama has it, you mentioned the run game, Jam Miller, Justice Haynes. I think Jalen Milroe will be a big part. I think back, guys, personnel's different. But last year, Bama kind of bullied Georgia in that SEC title game. That was something that really stood out, kind of made us think, hey, this isn't up to the Kirby Smart standard of excellence. Don't you got to think they're going to be thinking about that one from last year? I mean, that to me, it's, the run game is so big. Obviously, Ryan Williams is their big guy on the outside, the playmaker, the 17-year-old. Let's make sure we repeat that like everybody's doing every single week. What are you guys expecting when Bama has the football? Obviously, the way Kirby, Glenn Schumann, they scheme up Jalen Milroe, put him in some uncomfortable situations. I think it's going to be fascinating, that chess match between these two.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I was talking about Bama being injured in that national championship game. It's to be fair, too. Georgia was beat to hell last year. Bryant Bowers, Ladd McConkey was hurt. I mean, Jamon Dumas-Johnson was out there to play C.J. Allen and Raylan Wilson, and Bama took advantage of those wheel routes against them. So but Kentucky, I mean, Georgia was playing a bunch of young cats. You're right, though. Bama dominated on the ground. I think Georgia is going to attack Jalen a little different. I think they tried to keep him in the pocket, and I feel like teams last year kind of made that mistake of, hey, if he can get his platform and get both sets of cleats in the ground, he can actually deliver passes. It's when you're getting A-gap blitzes, Bama's not picking it up, and he's running behind, and he's running backpedaling, and he'll take an 18-yard sack. Again, I think we can all attest, since that Texas game last year, Jalen Milroe doesn't turn the football over. He'll take some bad sacks and maybe get a bad intentional grounding or something. You lose the down, we're spotted the foul. But he doesn't turn the football over. So Georgia's obviously going to try to create that. I think they're going to be more aggressive this year and try to bring A-gaps. Closer, I think they go look at what Todd Orlando did at USF, and he's had success against Bama the last 2 years with Jalen Milroe specifically, making him struggle in that game. Bama, again, their offense is different this year. You saw in that last drive in the SEC championship where they milked the clock. Tommy Rees just really relied on Jalen Milroe, and they didn't even have to give the ball back to Georgia, and they kneeled the ball and won the SEC championship game. This year, Bama's offense is really reliant on Jalen Milroe in that interior run game. If Georgia's not 100% on that interior, Bama, I think, has got one of the best interior offensive linemen. You factor in Parker Brailsford, Jaden Roberts, and Tyler Booker, who's probably their best overall offensive lineman across the board. Bama's physical up front. If Georgia's not ready, you could see a repeat of last year because Bama is more willing to run Jalen Milroe than they were last year. He's more involved in the schemed-up run game. So that's what I'm interested in seeing. But I do expect Georgia to be more aggressive this year than they were last year.
So Jalen Milroe right now has 14 total touchdowns on the season. Let me ask you guys, how many are in explosive plays? How many touchdowns?
He's got 14 touchdowns.
85% of their touchdowns this year have come on explosive plays. They know how to strike.
Score from four.
They know how to thread the needle and surgically make small drives into quick scores and put you behind the sticks. They can't do that against Georgia. I think that they need to control the clock. I think that if you're looking at it from this game, the one thing that you need to do is you need to see Kirby Smart kind of sit on the sidelines, Carson Beck holding up his helmet, throwing it down a little bit, wondering, okay, hey, when do I get on in? All right, when is it my turn to get out there? You need to control the tempo because if it's one thing to be able to score and it's one thing to be able to trust guys like Kobe Prentice, guys like Kendrick Law, guys like Ryan Williams. It's one thing to trust that you have a good ground game with Jam Miller and Justice Haynes. It's one thing to have a quarterback that knows how to open up the field and just turn on the jets and blast off for an easy 6. But controlling that tempo really does well for you because it also gives your defense as much time to game plan for any single counterpunch that you're going to see from a team like Georgia. And Georgia's got plenty of them. Georgia is not one of these one-dimensional offenses that is going to say, all right, we're going to go up-tempo. We're going to try to catch you off guard at the line of scrimmage, and then we're going to strike. No, they can do that. They can find a way to go ahead and run it slow. They can find a way to go ahead and have just quick design passes right out of the backfield. They have quick option plays. They can run the RPO if they want to. There's a lot of different things that Georgia can do in its playbook and a Rolodex of just what-if scenarios. If you're Alabama, you got to make sure that you limit that. That's what I'm looking for in this game. How do you make sure that you take the air, the momentum out of Georgia's offense to when they're sitting on the sidelines and it's 3rd and 2 and they're saying, okay, let's get ready for punt. All right, let's pause. They got a first down. Okay, it's 3rd and 8. They're going to go punt. All right, let's pause. And you see a frustrated Carson Beck wondering, what am I going to be able to do as that clock is ticking down towards the final seconds? That's what I'm looking for in this game because I know the explosives are going to be there. I know if you give me a one-on-one matchup with literally any single wide receiver, Jeremy Bernard, Kobe Prentice, Kendrick Law, Ryan Williams, even if you want to throw in tight ends like CJ Dippre, they're going to get it done. Caleb Odom, they're going to get it done. But if you get to control how Georgia calls their offensive plays, it's another chess match against Glenn Schumann. And again, it's offense versus defense. That's what you're going to see. It may not be two proteges underneath Nick Saban, but you are getting the offensive masterclass versus the defensive chess battle. That is what you will see on Saturday. Who is able to go ahead and come out on top?
And Cole, you mentioned the explosive plays, but this game, man, this is a good old-fashioned roll up your sleeves. Let's go behind the alley, and we'll see who comes out, right? Like, that's going to be the vibe.
I think we all agree here. Georgia's going to have to, I think, generate pressure with the second level. I don't know if they have guys right now that can go just win their one-on-one. Maybe Chaz Chambliss is more of an edge setter to me than he is a pass rusher.
It's not your typical Georgia D-line.
No, like Damon Wilson could get it done. He can get it done. And the thing I'll say is Bama's going to have to protect, because we all know. You go watch Kalen DeBoer back when he was at Fresno State. His explosive plays, his passing game, it takes a while. Like, they run a lot of banana routes. It's long developing. Like, so they're going to have to protect those corner routes. You'll see, we saw it with Jeremy Bernard, we saw it with Kendrick Law, like Cole was mentioning. That'll be interesting. Can they hold up? But again, like I said, this is a money game. Michael Williams coming back. They'll line him up at the 3, 5, and 7. You're going to be putting film up against Proctor and Tyler Booker. So we're going to have some battles here. A lot of the one-on-one matchups are going to obviously determine the outcome of this game.
The other thing that's really important is that last time that they faced off, you had two young linebackers in C.J. Allen and Ray Wilson. They're not young anymore. They've had an entire offseason to learn the ins and outs of what Glenn Schumann wants. They are taking over that defense at the second level. They are now taking control of what you want to see from a Georgia Bulldog defense. And they are following in the same footsteps as countless other linebackers that have made a name for themselves at the next level, including guys such as we talk about Roquan Smith. You could see that in a CJ Allen or in a Ray Wilson. So I'm telling you, it is going to be different for Jalen Milroe. He may be able to run, but they're also planning for it. And they know how to stop him this time.
Yeah, they were the reason they lost last year. But Alabama took advantage of them because they were beat up. I'm with you, Cole. Those guys will have that game circled.
They've had it circled since last year when they departed from the Georgia from Mercedes Superdome. They've had that game circled. Mercedes-Benz Stadium. My apologies. I know. I'm
going to piss off some Falcons fans.
Yeah.
Hey, RIP the Georgia Dome. Bring it back. No, guys, this is a game, again, when you got such good on good, talent on talent, elite on elite. The little things are the big things. The little things really matter. And, Bama cleaned it up against Wisconsin, but we've seen them be sloppy and a lot of penalties. And Georgia against Kentucky had 9 penalties. So, guys, that's something you got to keep an eye on, man. I mean,
Chris, you're 100% right. We talk about all these big game matchups. But like you said, it comes down to a critical turnover or a big penalty late in the games that you're usually circling back on. And
this is the kind of game we talk about in every sport. This game is going to come down to 4 or 5 moments. It's going to decide this game. 4 or 5 moments. Truly.
I don't even think it's that many. I think it's 2.
Point. Yeah.
I think it's 2 or 3 at most.
Also, another thing, we know Jalen Milroe is the best athlete on the field. Georgia, that was one of the worst tackling performances. That's one of the worst overall, Georgia, just from a lack of toughness. They looked, for lack of a better term, I'll probably get killed in the comments here. They looked soft in that game against Kentucky. They did. They looked soft. They couldn't tackle in space. That Georgia is usually one of the best block describe. Like when you see teams throw screens, in Georgia usually the clinic tape you're going to show on block destruction. It's like, yeah, that's
Cole
how you
said it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
I'm letting them take a clean shot at you. I'm getting out of that reach. But here's the deal: Kentucky played well enough to win that game. I mean, you and I can both agree with that one. Kentucky did play well enough. It was that they had a coach that was too afraid to go ahead and see what can happen on 4th and 8. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, and trust your defense to get a stop. But Kentucky played well enough. The other thing is that, again, you have not seen, after a sluggish performance, a team like Alabama waiting and welcoming you into their backyard after a bye week to get healthy. That's another key element here for, I think, a lot of different avenues for this. But there's a reason why I think this game can come down to 3 or 4 moments at most. And I'm saying 2, because there's also this scenario of what if Jalen Milroe, first play of the game, just uncorks one to Ryan Williams, 85 yards. And that's the tone setter. And that's the moment. And that's the moment where instead of we're talking about how this game was a blowout, no, that was the moment that defined this is where Alabama is. Or you watch as Nate Frazier just truck drives into one of the cornerbacks in the open field, Damani Jackson, or maybe throw Keon Sabb in there. And it is just a physical punch of saying, you can't tackle us. Like, there's those type of moments too. The world of this game, which is why I think that I'm so excited to talk about this and why this is going to be the game of all games. And I said at the start of the offseason, this was the game of the year. Go ahead and make sure that if you have kids, they're tucked away late at night, either grandma and grandpa are watch them. Make sure you got your favorite beverage on tap, that you maybe even have a piss bucket next to you if you need to, because you're not getting up for any reason besides watching this game, because this is still the game of the year. And there are so many different scenarios that could happen. I believe in the multiverse. There is a multiverse of games where just 2 or 3 moments could lead to a ripple effect for how we talk about college football moving forward. And that's kind of the beauty of it.
And make sure when you're watching the game, you got your phone, your tablet, your laptop, and cut on that post-game reaction video with Cole Thompson and Dave Shumate, because I know they're going to bring the heat. Guys, before we dive into our predictions for this one, let's do something a little different. Key player for the game for you. It can be a Bama guy, Georgia guy. Is there a key player in your mind that stands out that it's like, this guy's going to go a long way in determining the outcome of this game? I know there's some obvious ones, but is there just any particular player, whether it's a matchup, it's just a guy who needs to perform, whether it be on the Bama or Georgia side, that comes to mind for you?
I'd probably say, without going with the obviously skill guys like Galen Miller, of course, but right, Jared Wilson, the center of Georgia, they need to play well in the interior. They didn't play well up front against Kentucky. Jared struggled a little bit so far in the season. I'm going to go Jared Wilson. I think he's going to have to make some checks. Be interested to see what Kane Womack can then bring at him. I'm sure they're going to bring some pressure, kind of getting Carson Beck's face. I mean, again, Carson Beck, what's Carson Beck's biggest win in his college tenure so far? Again, not taking anything away from him. I think this would be his game, though. Like, this is it. Again, I'm really not taking a shot from him. His biggest win, I mean, let's be real. Georgia's schedule wasn't difficult last year. So that's how, I mean, again, you lost Alabama and maybe Florida State in that Orange Bowl, but I don't really know. This is it. This is his game to really go prove, hey, we've arrived. But again, I think it kind of starts, though, up front with his center, Jared Wilson. I think I'm going to go with him.
Dave, you really are making sure the comments are a mess. Go ahead, Cole.
LT Overton. I think that when you look at that interior defense, the interior offensive line of what you got for Georgia right now, the way that they like to scheme up the defensive front, where they're willing to shift them inside because of the linebacking core, because of the way that they play with now that bandit type of role and that wolf type of outside backer. I think LT Overton is going to have to win multiple matchups by making sure that he works the inside corner to get into that backfield, to get to the running back position, and also get to Carson Beck. And I'm going to go one step further offensively for Alabama, and then I want to just do one more for Georgia. I think for Georgia, it's Nate Frazier, because if you know what to expect, I think, from Trevor Etienne, we don't know what exactly this type of moment could be for Nate Frazier. This could be the breakout game where we're starting to put him in the same category as other talented running backs that have walked into Athens and come out on the other side as legends. And the same thing goes for Ryan Williams, because how good is Ryan Williams? I'm not going to go ahead and downplay that. Maybe you'll see a better version of USF at times. Maybe you'll see a better version of Wisconsin at times, but you have not faced off against a secondary like this. You will not face off against a better pair of safeties in KJ Bolden and Malachi Stark the rest of the year. You won't. If you're doing this against them, what's the limit? I mean, if you're able to do what you've done so far against these two, what's the limit? And the same thing goes, I think, for Nate Frazier. Because if you already showed what you're capable of against a Clemson defense that so far since that game has woken up and chosen violence throughout the ACC and against Appalachian State. Sorry about that one, Chris. But still, if you do it against Bama, I mean, we're talking about you in such a different direction and such a different demeanor. I think all 3 of those players could be the reason why either Alabama wins or Georgia walks away with a new standard down in Athens.
And to Cole's point with LT Overton, go back, encourage both of you. Go watch the Kentucky game against Ernest Green, how Kentucky took advantage of Ernest at left tackle. If Alabama could do that with LT Overton, and again, I was high on Ernest Green coming in. Still a young guy. He's got time to develop. I think he will. He'll be one of Georgia's other top NFL draft picks at some point. He's struggling right now. Got called for a couple of holding calls. That's somebody Bama may go try to expose. That's another interesting one, too. Georgia's offensive line, I think, massively key to this game.
Cole, you went Nate Frazier. I was going to go Trevor Etienne, low-hanging fruit. I think, again, Dave mentioned the run game, the play-action game. taking advantage of a young Bama secondary. I'll go the Georgia tight ends, though. You're a second Oscar Delp. We got to see more out of the tight ends. You bring in a guy in Urasek, you were so high on him. Again, you're looking for explosives in the passing game. You're looking for that guy to replace the production of a Brock Bowers who would, I come into a game like this, guys, and I know we already had the Clemson game, sure, but this is where it really matters. What Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers were so good at, it wasn't just piling on stats. When Georgia needed a big play, they were there. They were the dudes. They in the biggest moments, they stepped up. And I still don't know in this Georgia offense who that guy is. I just don't like. I was told one time by a college quarterback, SEC quarterback, difference between good teams and great teams. On the good teams, when it's crunch time, everybody's looking around saying who's going to make the play. Great teams, everybody's looking around saying I'm going to make the play. You got a bunch of dogs that want to make the play. So can Urasek, Delp, can they kind of establish themselves in this offense and be those go-to guys? Defensively, I'm going to go Mr. Ballhawk or Keon Sabb at safety. Again, I think Georgia's going to take shots. Keon Sabb's been really good for them early on. I think this is an opportunity where Keon Sabb can win some battles. And, again, you force a couple turnovers. Like I said, I just expect Georgia to try to go downfield, stretch the field vertically, find explosives. You might see Keon Sabb sitting there waiting. We know about what Malachi Moore does, but Keon Sabb's been quietly, I think, very good.
He's another kid to keep an eye on injury-wise, Malachi, coming off the concussion.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a big one. That's a big one for sure. All right, boys, let's lock in some predictions. Let's make some picks here. Alabama, Georgia, Bryant-Denny Stadium. All eyes in the college football world are on this one. Let's start from the other side of the screen and come back across. Cole Thompson, I'm going to let you kick this thing off. Who you got between the Dogs and the Crimson Tide?
This is the game. This is the game of the year. I don't care how the rest of the season unfolds. I don't care what the records say at the end of the day. This is the game, and it will stay the game because of, is it the passing of the torch? Alabama has been Alabama. Alabama has been the standard of college football for decades. Whenever you hear coaches go through the entire process about how do we get to that level, they don't compare it to Florida or Ohio State or Clemson. They compare it down to that town in Tuscaloosa and what Nick Saban has produced for over a decade. They want to deliver that type of expectations, those type of goals. And the one person who has come close outside of Dabo Swinney is the one that learned the ins and outs and took half of the playbook and built his own story, his own Bible. Very similar to an own religion. He created his own version down in Athens, Georgia. And that's Kirby. And Kirby has a shot now to take over and be that guy. And Chris, I'm going to put you on the spot real fast because I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but you told me in this offseason, the standard in college football is Georgia. Is it not? That's what you said, right?
I did say that.
You said the standard of college football was Georgia, right?
I did say that.
Wrong. The standard is not Georgia. The standard still is down in Titletown, USA, where multiple national championships have been won. The standard is still set with all Americans that have made their claim inside of Bryant-Denny Stadium. The standard is still set by the man who departed to go be with his beloved Miss Terry and left the program in great hands. The standard has been with those who have been a part of the system for years on end, who believe in what is Crimson Tide football. And the standard is not going away anytime soon. Alabama, 31. Georgia, 27. Final score. The standard stays in Titletown, USA.
Dave, I'll let you follow that up, my friend. I don't know that I can do so.
Yeah. So I'm going to say this one. I think you get both teams A games here. Georgia is not going to play as bad as they did against Kentucky. They had the perfect bye week. We talked about it. They're going to be probably as healthy as they possibly can. Again, they came into the season beat up. They had a physical fall camp. I think Kirby thinks it's going to pay off down the road. Cole's right. Massive game. I'm not to the point saying this is the biggest game ever because both teams' season is still in front of them with a loss. Both teams can still go make the college football playoffs. That's why I'm not to the point where this is the biggest game of the season yet, because they still, Alabama could lose this game in the next one. They're still in the college football playoffs, same with Georgia. But I think the key here is I think Georgia's got the better roster in their top 40, when healthy, when all things are even. But that's not the case right now. They're banged up. If this game's maybe in November, I would go Georgia. But the Tate Ratledge injury, that hurts me. Ernest Green struggling out there. I like Cole's key player of the game in LT Overton. That's a good X factor. Could have a big game if they can scheme him up. I think Bama's front seven plays really well. I think Carson Beck plays well. I think across the board, everybody's going to play really well in this game. I think the key is, though, Alabama gets to Carson Beck a little more, doesn't give him enough time to go take advantage of some opportunities in that Bama back end. I think there's going to be some opportunities there. Georgia's going to hit on some of them as well. I think that's going to be the difference. I think Bama's ground game on offense with Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer, the design run games, I think we're going to see some different stuff we haven't seen, obviously, from Alabama and Georgia. I just think Jalen Milroe's legs, again, are key in the fourth quarter. I think Georgia's conditioning is going to be key with them chasing around Jalen Milroe, maybe who spies him, I don't know, C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson. But I think overall, Alabama just makes another play. I'm going to go Alabama 31-28. I'm going to go Bama 31-28. I think the first to 30 probably wins this game. Like I'm saying, I could see this game going a million different ways. Both these teams, I think, will be in the college football playoff at the end of the year. I just think Bama at home, how Georgia is banged up right now, I got to give – I think I'm going to go Bama, give them the edge. I've been back and forth in this game ever since it ended last week. But give me Bama 31-28.
I'm laughing because I don't think I've ever seen Cole Thompson smile this big on air. That's a good pick. Listen, the Tate Ratledge thing scares the heck out of me. It's offensive line play. He was
healthy. I'll probably go the opposite.
Offensive line play is down, and you take out that key cog, and you could go sideways. It could go sideways. Absolutely. I love, again, Cole Spica, LT Overton. I think that's a key matchup in the game. I think you can wreak havoc. Georgia's got to find explosives. Bottom line, they've got to. I agree. I think there was this overreaction to Georgia winning a 1-point game over Kentucky on the road in a hostile environment against a team they always struggle with for whatever. They always play these tight games. There was an overreaction nationally, in my opinion. They got knocked out of the number one spot for winning a game. I think this game is being looked at differently because of that. We still don't know a lot about Alabama. I know they beat up on Wisconsin. I don't put a lot of stock in that. And the previous two were USF and Western Kentucky. This is the test. This is the game. I agree with Cole. I will say this is the biggest game because I think for Georgia and Bama fans, it's the biggest game of the year. It's the biggest game of the year that doesn't have a trophy attached to it.
I'm saying it's not, because if this was last year and it's a 4-team playoff, yeah, absolutely. I just think still these teams are still not eliminated no matter what.
I think, Dave, you're right. But this game is about something more than that. This game 100%. Is about pride. This game is about who runs this conference, right? Because I don't think anybody's ready to hand the mantle to – listen, Texas is very good, but you got some things to earn this year. You're going to have your opportunity. Just give us a couple weeks. We'll get to you in a couple weeks. We're going to – listen, we're going to play round robin in the SEC. Everybody's going to play everybody. We're going to find out really quickly. Man, this is a hard game to pick. It is. It's a hard game to pick, but it's not hard for me to pick at all either. Again, the Ratledge thing scares me. How banged up Georgia does concern me a little bit. What Jalen Milroe can do, again, he's been playing confident. You mentioned it, Dave, he doesn't turn the football over. I go back to this. I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to sound like a broken record. But this jumps out to me every time. And I'm going to send it to you boys as a word of caution. Because Georgia, since 2021, has played in 11 games in which you've given Kirby Smart more than 7 days to prepare. And boys, they're 11-0, and they've won 8 of the 11 contests by 22 or more points. Injuries be damned. Jalen Milroe, don't turn it over, be damned. Tate Ratledge is out, be damned. You're giving me Kirby Smart with more than a week to get ready, and they got knocked out of number one. There's nobody who's loving any of this more than Kirby. I think Kalen DeBoer is a great coach. He ain't been in this spot. This is new territory for Kalen DeBoer. Alabama's a very good football team. I think both these teams are going to be in the playoff, most likely. But in this contest, those numbers I just mentioned, I think Georgia will be able to establish enough of a ground game. They're going to work play action. They will find the explosives. I think somebody in that receiver room is going to step up and break out. Maybe one of the tight ends, like I mentioned. And I think Georgia is going to make just enough play. This is going to be a fourth quarter ball game, no doubt. The Georgia Bulldogs extend the streak. They moved to 12-0 since 2021 with more than a week to get ready. Kirby Smart has been licking his chops since the clock's hit 0 in Atlanta last year. You go into Tuscaloosa, they're going to break the hearts of all the Bama fans everywhere. Georgia with the late punch to make their point. I got Dogs 27, Bama 17. Jalen Milroe don't turn it over my ass. He's going to turn it over on Saturday. I can guarantee you.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Because you want to know why?
27-17?
27-17. I don't think it's as high scoring as y'all got it. I think it's a double-digit win again for Georgia. Again, you're giving me Kirby with more than 7 days. The number, listen, men lie, women lie, and I've told jokes, but I will never tell a lie. 11-0, 8-0 by 22 or more. The numbers speak.
You have no idea how happy I am that you picked Georgia, because if we all picked them for a clean sweep, it was not going to happen. Now the sweep is alive and well. Now, because there is no sweep, Bama's dominance, the reign in Titletown, sticks around a little bit longer. We will see a new era, and it's only just a new chapter, led by Kalen frickin' DeBoer.
And I may have ruined my trip to Tuscaloosa. They may not even let me in the city anymore, but listen,
I'll take your ticket. It'll be good. Everything will be fine.
Your drinks at Galette's will be split in now.
It's all love, and I can't wait to see you, Ryan Denny, and whatever the bars and the streets. And I don't know exactly everything. I'm going to learn as I go. Somebody let me know. I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. Guys, either way, no matter who you're picking or what your score, it's going to be an epic showdown, an epic battle. Again, the SEC Unfiltered Game of the Week. We will be there on hand. Do you agree with me? Do you agree with Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson? Alabama, Georgia, who comes out on top Saturday night in Tuscaloosa? Guys, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. You want to make sure those notifications are on because, like I mentioned earlier, Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, they're going to go live as soon as this game's hit 0 to give you the full reaction, the breakdown, and I can tell you this will probably be one of the most electric we have all season. So make sure those are on. Check us out via podcast. It'll be there as well. Social media, you know the drill, and SECUnfiltered.com. That's where you can get all your content from us. For Dave Shumate and Cole Thompson, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.